Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to part 3 of my tutorial for the coding assignment for authentication and admin. And in part 3, we're going to be adding the code to our project that enforces the rules that we've already created for login and for permissions. In part 2, in part 1, we got the login to work. In part 2, we set up the user groups, and we set up a set of users, and we we assigned permissions to the user group, and we tested out that our users were getting the right permissions through their groups. But at the very end of all this, if you recall, our users, despite the fact that they logged in and they had the proper permissions, they were able to do anything they wanted to in our application because we hadn't changed the application to enforce the new rules. So here we are in the application. You can go anywhere you want, whether you're logged in or not. Let me make that a little bigger. Okay. We had a little problem there with my headset. I apologize for that. And now we're going to, we're going to log in. So we'll log in as somebody with a lot of power. Instead of that, let's log in as the clerk. They're only supposed to be able to get to the listings and the detail pages. But as you can see, they can get to whatever. They can get to, and they can execute whatever they want. Okay, so and then if we go down here, I can edit things, I can delete things. And why is that? Well, because we have the rules all defined and the users all defined, but we're not enforcing anything. So let's go start to enforce some of these things. So the place where all these things are enforced are in the views. So let's open up views.py and get a look at where we are. Okay? We can make this code just a little bigger to see. Yeah, very good. Things are in pretty good shape here. For the most part, we're using entirely class-based views. There are no function-based views at all. And then within that, wherever we can, we're using generic class-based views. Okay? The two that we're not using the generics on are the detail view. All the detail views are just a subclass of the view class. Okay, instead of the generic class-based views like create view. And the deletes, except for one of them, they're custom code as well. They're subclasses of the view class. Now, this is the second time I'm teaching this course here in the fall of 2018. And the first time I taught it was back in the spring of 2018. And I found out the hard way that the support for enforcing the rules for class-based views was not what I had really hoped it would be. And that's because historically, the support that we had for protecting each of the views from being accessed if you weren't logged in or you didn't have the proper permissions. It was all geared towards function-based views. Okay, and the big move to class-based views is recent. So because of that, the last time I taught the course, we had to use some code from the Pinkham book that that applied those kind of protections to our class-based views. Now, fortunately, since I taught that class, we've had an update to Django, a couple of big updates to Django. And in Django 2.1, we have built-in facilities for protecting class-based views. And the way that we do it is with mix-ins. Now, we've worked with mix-ins in the past. I'll call your attention to the mix-in that you can see on the screen right now. When we look at the view for instructor list, we can see that it's using the page links mix-in. Okay, and just a refresher on how mix-ins work. In Python, you're not limited to being able to, when you declare a class, you can say it's a subclass of more than one superclass. Okay, now typically we only subclass one real superclass. Okay, one superclass that's part of our class hierarchy system. And if you want to give your class some kind of extra superpowers, you can have it also subclass a mix-in class. And the way a mix-in class works is it gives your class kind of extra abilities. Okay? And the convention is that when you create a class like that, that its name ends in mix-in. Okay? So typically, we're only going to subclass one proper superclass, and we can also subclass all the mix-ins that apply. So, how many mix-ins are we going to need? Well, we've got two things that we want to do here. One is we want to make sure that for most of the views that we have, for almost all of our pages, we want to make sure that the user is logged in, because we want to be able to check their permissions. Okay? In fact, what pages do we really care for that on? Here we're looking at the application again. I care about all of the pages except for the About page. Okay, now it's entirely possible in this kind of record-keeping system, it would be entirely possible to say you don't get to even get into the record-keeping system at all unless you're logged in and unless you have the proper permissions. But I wanted you to be able to see what it would be like for strangers, people who are not part of our user group, what kind of permissions and capabilities we could give them, because that's the kind of thing that you often do. In a blog, you've got people who are not logged in. There's a lot of applications where you want to give some capabilities to people who are not logged in. So I decided we'd have a single page, the About page, that you can get to all by itself. We're going to make that the default page that you go to when you come to the application. So when you fire up the server right now, let's close the browser. When you fire up the application right now, you go to section list. Okay? Well, that's not going to work all that well when we say that you have to be logged in to get the section list, right? It's not going to work that well when we say that you have to have permission to get to section list. And what we're eventually going to do before we get to the end of part 3 is we're going to say the one thing that you can get to, no matter who you are, is the About page. So we're going to make that the landing spot for the application. Okay? And that's just to be able to demonstrate that we can have an unprotected page. Okay? Whereas in your application, you may have a lot of unprotected pages. All right? Oh, okay. So 2 things. I can see we're logged in right now as clerk. So why don't we log out? Okay, we're logged out now. 2 things. We want to make sure that they're logged in, and we want to make sure they have the proper permissions. Okay, let's go take a look at the first of the views we're going to work on. And the first of the views that we're going to work on is this instructor list. Okay, and I'm going to bring that up in my already baked version. Okay, and let me find it in the already baked version. There it is, right there. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to add login required mixin. So there's a mixin class that's a part of the authorization app that's called Auth. Okay, and it has a class that's called login required mixin. Okay, well that's going to take an import. So let's highlight that. Do alt return. Whoop, I didn't do alt return. Let me do the real alt return right there, and you'll see that we've got a new import for this Django contrib auth mixins import login required mixin. And I also see that we have some imports up here that are not getting used. I'm just going to get rid of them as long as I'm doing my house cleaning. Okay, so login required mixin. Do I have to add anything else? No, I don't. Okay, so that's going to require it to be logged in. Okay, now let's see what else we're going to do. We want it to have the proper permission as well. So we're also going to add in another mixin called permission required mixin. And there it is. And we're going to need an import for that as well. Okay? So right now, just by adding the mixins, we tell it that you have to be logged in to get here, and you have to have the proper permission. Okay, so now my question is, what's the proper permission? Well, we have to tell it. So we have to create an instance variable for our class called permission required and give it the value that says this is the permission that we need. Now we could have more than one, but in our architecture for our application, each of our views only needs a single permission. So there is a version of the syntax where you say that it requires 2 or 3 or 4 permissions, but this is the single permission syntax. And the instance variable is called permission required, and the 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 way that we code the value is course info dot, and then this is the code name of the permission. Its code name is view underscore instructor. Okay, so let's go test that. Okay, let's just go right back, fire up the browser. Okay, so let's say we want to go to the instructor list. Oh, how about that? So it didn't allow me to go to the instructor list, okay? But did it take me anywhere useful? Okay, it looks like it's going to some account's login page. We had that problem before when we set up the login. Okay, so the problem is that we're not logged in. It wants to send us to the login page. We haven't given it enough information to know where to go to the login page. Okay, now how are we going to fix that? Well, we're going to fix that in settings.py. So we're going to go down to our settings.py. Okay, and we are going to set a variable. We've been setting a lot of these in the very bottom. Let's start to separate these values. So we have a login redirect URL, a logout redirect URL. Let's add login URL. This is the URL that you log into. Okay? Because we want to send them to the login page. So how do we get to the login page? Well, there's a couple of different syntaxes that you can use. We use that reverse lazy. We've seen that before. Let's make this code a little bigger so you guys can see it. Let's do the import for reverse lazy, alt return. Okay. And what we do is we simply say that we want to go to the page that's associated with the login URL pattern. Okay, that's all we have to do. We've also said we want to do that when we log out. Okay, now right now we say that the login redirect URL pattern is the about URL pattern. Okay, so that says anybody who logs in is going to go to the about page. That's because we are going to have some people who are logged into Django, don't have any permissions in our application, and if they're going to go to one of our pages, they have to go to one that you can be on without permission, and the only one is the about page. Okay, so let's take this code. Let's do a test. Okay, so now we're not logged in. Okay, we have the invitation to log in. We click on instructors. That should take us to instructor list. But no, not anymore. It takes us to the login page. You can't get to instructor list without being logged in. Okay, so let's click on the clerk. They should be able to get to all the lists and all the details. So here we go. We're at the instructor list. Okay. See how that works. That works the right way. Okay, let's log out with the clerk. And I said that we do have a user that we defined who is able to log in but doesn't have any authorization on our Course Info app. That's the coworker. So let's log in as coworker and see what happens. Okay, so we're logged in. What if we try to go to the instructors page? 403 forbidden. Okay, so If we try to go to a page that we don't have permission to go to, we're going to get punished. Now, this is both good and bad. This is good in that we don't want visitors to our site to get to pages that they don't have permission to go to. It's bad in terms of interaction design, okay? You should not allow users to see navigation choices that they're not permitted to click on, right? So right now, we're showing this link for instructors when the coworker who's logged in should not be permitted to navigate there. Very shortly, what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to fix that problem. Okay? Not quite yet. All right. So we've got that fixed. Let's go back to our views. Okay. And let's try to put, not just try to put, let's put the proper mix-ins on all of the instructor views. So we've got the list, we've got the detail, we've got the create, we've got the update and the delete. Okay. Now, how are we going to know what the right values are to put in the permission value? Well, it turns out there's a formula for it. Okay. Each model class has 4 permissions: view instructor, it's add, change, delete, and view. Okay, so it's a combination of the app, dot, and then add, change, delete, or view, plus the model class name. Okay, so you can imagine that we can dream these up. It's a lot of work. Well, I've done some of the work for you. So let's go, let's bring up SQLite Studio, which we're going to bring over here. Let me shrink it a bit first so it fits on my laptop. Okay, so here's SQLite Studio, and I'm not in the practice database. I'm in the production database. So this is the one I want to look at. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to refresh the database schema just to make sure it's up to date. And let's go and make sure that we have all the right things in our database. Okay, so let's look at the users and auth user. So let's go there and let's click on the data tab. And you see I have all the users that we added in part 2. I had tester. Now I've got sysadmin, clerk, scheduler, registrar, and coworker. Okay, so you should have all those. Now let's look at the user groups. Double click on that and go to the data tab. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not the user group. The one we want is auth group. So double click on that and go to the data tab. And we've got CI user, CI scheduler, CI registrar. So those are the 3 that we have. Okay. And we have these permissions. So if we go to auth permission, okay, and go to the data tab, you will see that for each of these um, permissions, they have a code name and a name. Okay, so these ones up top are the ones from the auth application itself. Down the bottom here, you can see them for our application. Okay, so there's, where are we? There's course, instructor, registration, section, student, year, period, year. Okay, so we have all those. Okay. How do we know that they're part of course info? Okay, well, because of the content type ID. Okay, so there's a table called Django content type right here, and let's go look at this. Content type is an alias for model class name. Okay, so I'm sorry. There's an app. I'm wrong. I'm wrong. The content type allows you to find both the app label course info and the name of the model class. Okay, so these are two of the things that we want. We want the app label, and we need the model class. So what did I do? Well, I went and I created a query that builds us all the strings that we need for our programming. So you go up to the top to tools and you open an SQL editor. Okay, and I haven't found a way to actually open a file, but in your starter files, okay, starter files, you have a file called SQLite Query for Authentication and Admin Part 3. So you're going to want to go there and open it up. And I'm going to open mine with just text edit. And here we go. Here's the code that's in it. And I just created a select. The only thing that was hard about this is that apparently in SQLite, they don't have a concat function. So instead of that, they use the double OR bars. So I wanted to concatenate the bunch of characters here, and the app label, and a period, and the code name, and all those things. And so it's a little bit weird. If this were proper SQL, instead of the double bars, we'd have done it with a concat. Okay, but we're going to take this. I'm going to take this code, and we're going to copy it, and we're going to paste it into the query editor. Okay, and it's proper SQL, and then we're going to come up here, and there's a little play button, a little blue play button up here. We're going to play it, and look at this. Now we have, and I put them in the order of the model class name. So we have course before instructor, before period. They go in alphabetical order. And then the code names for the permissions are add, change, delete, and view. So I ordered these so that we have all four for the course, and they come out in alphabetical order. And what's the value that you have to assign to the variable? or right there. I even put the apostrophes at the end of it for you. Okay, so add course, change course. So what have we done so far? Well, we've done instructor view. That's the value we have already. Okay, so instead of having to type all these by hand, you should be able to click on this and then right click and copy it and paste it right into the program. Thank you. You're welcome. All right. So let's go and change some more code. All right. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to take this same I want to take these same mix-ins and I want to apply them to every view we have. Okay? We're just going to do this all at once. Okay, so how could we do this? Well, we're just going to add these class names, the mix-in class names, and the commas in one space. We're going to add those on every class declaration header. So we're going to go to the next one, instructor detail. Paste it. Okay? And we're going to go to the next one, instructor create. Paste it. So I'm going to pause here. I'm not going to make you watch me do all these, but I'm going to pause and I want you to go and paste all of these in so that we have the headers for all of these class-based views include the two mix-ins. Okay? Now the only one, oh yeah, and we want it for everyone. Everything we have a view for gets them both. Okay? We do have one page that we're not protecting this way, but it doesn't have a view because it's wired up with the template view generic class-based view, so it's not one of our views. So all of our views are going to get these two. So, well, let's see. I'll have you watch me do the instructors. So that's the instructor update. Now the instructor delete. Okay, so we've done all those together. Now I'm going to put you on pause, and I want you to do it for all the rest of the views in views.py. It's pretty easy to do. So I'm going to put you on pause, and I'm going to do it, and you're going to do it, and we'll come back together. Here we go. Okay, now I have all of mine done, and I hope that you have all of yours done. Now, the first time I did this, when I did it in my practice or already baked version, I went back and checked, and I had actually missed a couple. So here's what I want you to do next. I want you to go through this very slowly. We're going to go through the instructor views. So I got list, I got detail, got create, got update, I got delete. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to pause this, and I want you to pause and go check through all the rest of them and make sure that you've added the mix-in classes to the header for each of the view classes. Okay, I'm going to put you on pause, and we're both going to do that. We'll be right back. Here we go. Okay, so I went and I checked mine, and I didn't miss any at all this time. So if you're being careful, I guess you do better. Now, you'll remember that just adding the name of the login required mix-in is all we need to do for that mix-in. But on the permission required mix-in, we also have to provide this instance variable that has the proper value to assign the permission. So we're going to have to do this for each of these as well. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do. I'm going to take this as it currently is from the instructor list, and I'm going to copy it down. It goes right underneath the header for the class. Okay. Now, some of these things don't have a lot more than the header for the class. Okay, and some of them do. Okay, so in a class like instructor list, it goes in a nice line here. In a class like instructor detail, where we've got a method, this is going to be in a new place. We had a method for get, but we didn't have any instance variables before. Well, it's going to go right here. So is this the proper value? Well, it turns out that it is a proper value, but only it's not going to be for all of them. So here's what I've done. This is an old coding trick of mine. So on this second one, the one for instructor detail, I'm going to type in all caps. I'm going to type in fix me. Okay, I just want some character string, not one that's too big, but one that's easy to see and one that's going to create an error. And then in the current operation, we're going to go down and we're going to put this line under each of these class headers for the for the class-based views. Okay, so I'll do it with you for the rest of the instructor views. So we have that for instructor detail, and let's go down and add it at the end for instructor create. Well, that wasn't what I wanted. Command V, let's paste that in there. And then instructor update. And then instructor delete. Okay, and remember, for some of these classes that have methods, you're going to be adding this right up at the top under the class header, right? It's going to look a little odd. It's going to be the only line that looks like that. Okay, so go down and do that just like you put the two mix-ins on every class header. Now add a line for each class to be the placeholder for setting the permission required instance variable. So I'm going to put you on hold. I'm going to do the rest of these in views.py, and I'm going to expect you to do the same, and then we'll get back here together. So we're going into hold now. Here goes. Okay, we're back. So I finished mine. So at this point, I've added this line. It's got one error in it each time, but it has a nice, easy place to find the text we have to replace. And I have put it under each of the method, the class headers. I put it either right under the header if I didn't have any instance variables declared immediately after the header, or like up here in instructor lists where I had two instance variables already declared. I made it the last one. So it's the last one when there are three. It's the last one when there's only one. Okay, I want you to make sure that you didn't miss any of those either. So I'm going to take a pause and check through all of mine again to make sure I've got this line copied into each of the classes that forms a view in views.py. So we're going on hold and we'll be right back. And we're back. I'm pleased to say that I was very careful that time too, and I didn't make any mistakes. Okay, so remember that the values that we need to paste in here are now in our query. They're in our result set of our query over here in SQLite Studio. So we have these in alphabetical order. Okay, that's not the order that I have my views in views.py. Maybe yours are in a different order. Maybe they're in alphabetical order. Okay, fine. What I recommend is we start at the top of views.py and then we just find our way to the value that we need. Okay? So you have to remember that the keywords that we use for the functions in this permission scheme doesn't map precisely to the words that we use when we form the view names. Okay, the view names use the modern words for database functionality, the CRUD words. Create, retrieve, update, delete. Okay, these permission names really use the more traditional words that describe these same functions: add, change, delete, and view. Okay, so you're going to have to map between them. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to find our way to the one that we want. So we're looking up instructor view. That's right here. That's the first one that we're on. Okay, and we're not finished with that yet, so I'm going to copy that value. Okay, and let's see. Instructor list is already finished. What's the next one? Instructor detail. That's a view as well. Both you're viewing it, you're looking at it. You're not changing it, you're not adding it, you're not deleting it. So this is going to get the same value. I'm going to highlight that, right click, and paste. Okay, or I can do Control V. That's actually a little faster for me. Okay, so now I've got the first two. Now, what's the third view for instructor? Create. Let's go look that up. Okay. Create is add. Add instructor. Come over here. Click. Add instructor. Copy. All right. Where is it? Okay. Copy. Instructor create. Double click, Command V or Control V, and we got the proper value. When we're looking for update, we want to find change. Okay, so I'm going to copy the value for change over top of this, paste it. And then the last one in the series is delete. So that's the last one in the series in our result set. Copy that. And paste it over top. Okay? Now what I really like about this approach is that these syntax errors that we were getting with that fix me value are going away. Okay, so when we get this all done, provided that we're careful in pasting in the correct values, This should be, it's not foolproof, it's full resistant. That's what I say. Okay, so we've done all the instructor views together. You have all the information that you need to complete them. I'm going to pause here. I'll complete them on my copy. You complete them on yours. And so when we've pasted all the values in, and we've resolved the syntax errors in views.py, then we're going to come off of pause and we'll start up again with the next part. See you in a few minutes. Here we go. Okay, I've completed all of that for all of my character strings that I needed to properly place, and so now all my permission requireds are properly done. I've also gone through mine and checked to make sure that I didn't miss any. Okay. If you want to, you could also stop here and check just to make sure that the value add instructor, for instance, matches the class name instructor create. Okay, you could do that too. I'm pretty sure I've got mine all correct, but it never hurts to be careful. Okay. Okay, so what's left to do now? Well, we need to test this. Okay, so let's do some testing. I'm going to show you the first part of the testing, and then I'm going to pause and have you do the rest of the testing on your own. Okay. So what just happened? Well, I just clicked here on the link, and I went to the section page, and that's not really what I wanted. So let's try that again. So I clicked, I went to the section, and again I went to a place that I didn't really want to go to. Now let's look at that. So let's go to settings.py. Let's go to settings.py. And let's look at what we've got here. So we've got a login redirect URL to about URL pattern, logout direct redirect URL, login URL pattern, and then we've got a login URL to login URL pattern. Oh, you know, we need to change one more thing. I forgot. I forgot this when I did the practice. In our URLs.py that's up at the project level, we have to go here, and you remember that we have a redirect here for the empty path. And right now, where are we sending it? We're sending it to the about URL pattern. That's where it's supposed to be. Log out about. Well, I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to pause and I'm going to find out the problem. Be right back. I found it. Okay. So, here's what we're going to do. Probably want to close the things we're on. So we want to go to urls.py for the overall project. This is the one that's in the directory for the overall project. And I don't know. I think I got I got a little I had a little bit of a problem there. I was looking at the already baked version. I do have a problem on the redirect that I'm doing for the empty path, and it's going to section list. Okay, I was right after all. So where do I want to go to? Well, on these other ones, I'm going to course info slash login HTML. I'm forwarding to course info URLs, a lot of different places. Where do I want to go? I just want to forward to about URL pattern. So I'm going to back off of this. Okay, and about URL pattern doesn't have course info in front of it because it's not in the lower level. It's not in the URL patterns for the app. It's in the URL pattern for the entire server. So it's going to be about URL pattern right there. All right, now let's go and click on this. And there we go, the about page. All right, so I knew what the problem was, but I was having a problem. Okay, so now we're logged out. And I'm gonna test we get the proper behavior for the instructors, okay? And I want you to test the sections and the rest, okay? Now, so log out. Okay, so right now when we're logged out, okay, we should not be able to get to right now, if we click on anything that needs a login, we should go to the login page. Okay? The about page doesn't need a login. We should go right to the about page. That's the first thing that we want to make sure works. Okay, so now let's log in with a user who doesn't have authority in our application, the coworker. Okay? And at this point, all right, if we go to instructors, it shouldn't work. Well, I guess we can do them all. Or sections, it doesn't work. Courses, doesn't work. Semesters, doesn't work. Students, doesn't work. Registrations, it doesn't work. Now, you might say, well, that's horrible interaction design, but in the very next part, the very last part that we do for part 3 here, we're going to take these links out for people who don't have the authority to go there, and then we won't have it won't be typical to see links that you can't go to. All right, now let's do just a little more testing on instructors. So who can see instructors? Well, the clerk ought to be able to see instructors, right? They ought to be able to see the instructor. They ought to be able to see the detail. They still have got the problem that they've got these buttons. They've got these buttons that they can't do now. So they can't do the update or the delete, and they can't do the add. Okay. And we're going to have to take those out of the user interface. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go through and make sure. Okay. I'm sorry. I have to test a little bit more here. In instructors, who should be able to do all those things? The scheduler should be able to do all these things. So they should be able to properly add an instructor, create an instructor. Yeah, that works. Or they should be able to edit. They should be able to delete. Okay. All right, and let's log out. And let's see who else we have. The registrar is another person who shouldn't be able to do the. They should only be able to see the instructors. So they can't add an instructor. They can't edit an instructor. They can't delete an instructor. And again, we're going to take these links away from them before we're done here today. All right, so we properly tested instructors. We have all the rules in place. We haven't changed the way that we display things yet. So what I want you to do is I want you to go and test for sections and courses and semesters and students and registrations that the users all behave as they should. Okay, and remember with the users, the clerk should only be able to do the view stuff. That's the list and the detail. The coworker should only be able to see the about page. The registrar should only be able to do the view for instructors, sections, courses, semesters, and they ought to be able to do all the functions for students and registration. The scheduler ought to be able to do all the functions for instructions, sections, students, semesters. Sections, courses, and semesters. The scheduler should only be able to view students and registrations. And sysadmin should be able to do anything with anything. Okay? So that's a lot of testing. I'm going to leave that for you to do, and then I'll be back and we'll complete our work by adjusting the user interface and one or two other small things that we need to get this just working perfectly. So I'm going to pause here and we'll be back to finish it up in another couple of minutes. See you then. Okay, we're back. So you should have finished all of the testing. And let's see, I'm going to log this person out. Okay, so now we're logged out. Let's go to the About page. We should be here. So right now, if you've been keeping up, you should have all of the protections in the views to make sure that the user is logged in and has the proper permissions to run that view and to be on that page. Okay? The only page that's not protected is the About page. The About page does not have a view in views.py. We're borrowing one of the built-in views, the template view for that. Okay? So at this point, we should be properly protected. The problem is that we're showing options in the user interface that users are not allowed to do, right? So if we log in as the worst case is if we log in as a coworker, okay, the coworker is only supposed to be able to get to the About page. They're not supposed to be able to see instructors, forbidden. Sections, forbidden. They're not allowed to go anywhere. Registrations, forbidden. And various others of our users are restricted from certain things. In addition to being able to go places, okay, the other problem that we have is, let's log in clerk. Okay, now the clerk is supposed to be able to see all these things, right? So they can go to all these locations, but they're not authorized to either to create a new model class instance, like a new registration. They're forbidden from doing that. And if they go to a detail page, they're not allowed to edit, forbidden again, and they're not allowed to delete. Right? So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to go into the templates. and we're going to revise the template code such that we don't offer in the user interface, we don't offer links or buttons that the user is not authorized to use. And that's consistent with the expectations that we have for good user interaction in the current day. All right? So why don't we log out? Okay. Now, we're changing a couple of things with our templates. Okay, let's just look at our templates here. Go up to templates. We've got the base template, right? And up towards the top, we have the links. So we're going to protect the links such that we're going to only show the links that the user has permission to visit. Okay, so we're going to take care of that. We're also going to protect some buttons. Okay. In addition, there's some part of the styling and layout that I haven't introduced yet from the Pinkham book. And I don't know if he introduced them at this point or whether I just held off on them. I can't really remember. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you I'm going to take some things from our starter files. Okay. And I'm trying to get up the directory for that. So my starter files is going to be right here. Okay, yeah. So here are the starter files that I've given you. Okay. So we've already used this query, right? Everything else is a template. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have you copy all of these over and paste them over top of the templates that we have right now. And this is going to do a couple of things. One is it's going to add a template code such that the links and the buttons are only going to appear when appropriate. Two, it's going to change the styling a little bit. It's going to improve the layout for the buttons and things like that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get ready to copy all this, and then I'm going to subtract out my query, right? And I'm going to copy 13 template files, and I'm going to take them and I'm going to paste them into the course info subdirectory under templates. So I'm going to right click and I'd say paste, and I'm going to say OK. And I'm just going to click on overwrite for all. Okay, so now I've overwritten all of them. Okay, now, right now, I've got on the screen the code for base.html. So let's look at that on the full screen. Okay, so let's look how the code is changing. I decided that it would be easier to do it this way instead of having you typing in all this code, especially because we're changing some of the layout and styling. Okay, but what we've done is we've taken each of these links and we've said if perms course info view instructor. So that's how we refer to, does the logged in user, does the current user, are they logged in and have this permission? If they have it, then we'll show the link. If not, we won't. So we protect all the links except about. That's the only thing you can do without the proper login and permission. Okay? Pretty cool, huh? Um, let's go to another one of these. Let's go to instructor list template. Okay, let's let's bring that all up. Okay, now we've done a couple of things, and I don't really recall where in the Pinkham book he introduces this. He may not introduce it until this part. In any case, I held off until now. Uh, we have we've on the list page we've split the content so that we have a block that holds the create button, and then we have a block that holds the more mundane textual content. And then within the block for the button, we only show the button if they have the add instructor permission. Okay? Pretty straightforward stuff. And now let's look at the detail page, instructor detail. Okay, and again, we'll bring that up full screen. Okay, so we don't have the buttons separated out from the rest of the content. The buttons are still sort of integrated into one big block called content on this one. But we have up here in this place where we keep the buttons, we only add the button if you've got the permission. So if you have the permission for change, you get the edit button. If you have the permission for delete, you get the delete button. Okay? It just so happens the way we set up our permissions, if you have one, you get the other. But that might not be true forever, right? So we code them individually. Okay, so having done that, let's go back and see how our application is going to look with these changes. So right now, these should be all the changes that we need in the templates, such that we're not going to be showing possibilities to click on that the user isn't allowed to do. So we should be getting rid of all of our 403 forbidden problems. Let's go look. Okay, so we're back here. So let's see, we're not logged in, so we can log in. The only place we can go is About. How about that? And again, I just want to show it again. When we come up, we're on the About page, because that's the default page now. We can see About, and we have the option to log in. Okay, good. Let's log in. Let's log in as the coworker who's not supposed to be able to do anything except see the About page. So we log in as the coworker. They can only see the About page. That's all they can do. Isn't that beautiful? So now we're going to log out. Okay, let's get up a little bit higher. So the clerk, log in as the clerk. The clerk, they're able to see all these things, but they shouldn't be able to do add, change, and delete. So let's confirm that. So the instructors, there's no add button. And when we go to the detail page, there's no change or delete buttons. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, let's check that for sections. Uh, Same deal. Let's check that for courses. No add button, no edit or delete button. Semesters, no add button, no edit or delete button. Students, no add button, no edit or delete button. Registrations, no add button, no edit or delete button. Pretty good. And we can go to the About page. Okay, so the clerk is working fine. Let's look at the sysadmin. They should be able to do everything. So we've already seen what that looks like. Let's just confirm that they can do it. So with instructors, yeah. Now, with the change in the layout, the add button is over to the right. I don't really remember whether Pinkham did that or I did that. In any case, it's over here now. Okay? So if we create, that works fine. If we go to a detail page, we've got these two buttons, but they're on the same line now. And they work. All right, that's good. Okay, so I'm not going to test all of them. In fact, I'm going to pause here because I don't want you to have to play all this. I'm going to pause here, and I want you to test that if you have the authorization, you get all the buttons. Okay? So I'm going to pause right now, and we'll be back after you've got it tested, and I'll test it too. Okay, I was just on registrations, and that worked just fine. So what else do we have to test? Let's log out of there. The scheduler should be able to do all the functions for instructors, sections, courses, semesters, but not students and registrations. They should only be able to see, not add, change, or delete them. So let's go to students. They can't add, they can't change or delete. That's good. And then registrations, they can't add, they can't change or delete. That's great. And then let's look at the other ones. The semesters, they look like they're getting the buttons on that. The courses, they're getting the buttons on that. The sections, they're getting the buttons on that. The instructors, they're getting the buttons on that. So that's good. Okay, let's log the scheduler out and let's look at the registrar. And it's kind of the opposite of the scheduler. They should not have the buttons on the first 1, 2, 3, 4. They should have the buttons on the last two. Okay, so let's check out instructors, no buttons, no buttons. Sections, no buttons, no buttons. Courses, no button, no buttons. Semesters, no button, no buttons. That's good. Now, students should have all the buttons. You can add a student, you can edit or delete. Perfect. And then registrations. You can add a registration, you can edit or delete. That's beautiful. So let's look at this. We've done just about everything that we need to do. Okay? There's one more thing that I want to do, and that has to do with what happens when we close the browser. Okay, so right now I'm logged in as the registrar. Okay? And if I close the browser and I open the browser again, I'm still logged in. Okay. Now, most of us think that that's an insecure design. Some of us might think that's kind of nice because we can go resume our session. Okay. Um, but typically we don't want to do that. Okay. Now, what if we, instead of just closing the browser, how about if we quit the application? In the Mac, there's a distinction between closing a window in the application, in which case you typically can go back to the application and the application's still running. Okay, so you can actually close a window and have it still running. When you come back to the application, you go back to where you were. There's a distinction between that and quitting it, and which is really shutting down the application. So let's see, if we shut down the application in Firefox, there's not such a distinction in Windows. So here on the Mac, if we shut this down with a quit, can I come back simply by clicking on the link? Yes, I can. So the default for Django is that logins are sticky. They're persistent. Okay? How do we keep that from happening? Well, we're going to do it now. We just need to make one more entry in our settings.py. So let's come down and find our settings.py. It's right here. And we have all these big variables set at the end. We're going to add one more. And the thing that we want to make sure we close up when we close the browser is the session. Now, sessions are useful for situations where you need to persist information across a number of requests from the browser. A typical situation like this is when you're doing, say, a survey. So there is the capability to keep data in your session object and to figure out every time you come in where you are in the middle of the session conversation and to resume it. Okay? But for us right now, we want to make sure that dies when you close the browser. Okay? If you close the browser, all bets are off. All session data gets lost. And the way we do that is we set the variable session expire at browser close to true. Okay. We've got that. And then the other thing we're going to want to do is I think we're going to want to stop the server and start it again. I never really remember whether I have to do that, but it's certainly the safe thing to do. Okay, now let's come back and see if we solve the stickiness problem. So again, we're logged in as the registrar. What if we just close the browser on the Mac? Is that enough? No, on the Mac, that's not enough. What if we go up and quit the browser on the Mac? Yes, that's enough. So if we come back, oops, it's not enough. I'll be right back. I have to fix one thing, and I'll be right back. I finally remembered. Now, here's what you need to do. When you haven't had that value properly set in your settings.py, okay, the browser, the application server and the browser are storing cookies on your client through your browser that says to keep your session alive. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to make sure just now when you make this change, you have to make sure that you go back to the browser in the browser and you have to tell it to forget those cookies. So how could we do that? Well, we could go to history, clear recent history, and it says what a time range to clear the last hour. Okay, this is enough for me. And say clear now. It includes the cookies. Okay, and it says it's clearing. Okay, now close the browser, and now open the browser, and you're not logged in. Okay, now once you do that clearing of the cookie ceremony, the cookie ceremony, now you can log in. Okay, and let's say we log in as the sysadmin. And say we, again, just closing the browser on the Mac. Closing the browser is typically enough on Windows, but just closing the browser on the Mac isn't enough. If you open the browser up again on the Mac, you're still logged in. But on the Mac, if you quit the app, okay, and then when you fire it up again, you're not logged in. Okay, so that's it. We have the authentication and admin apps working the right way. I think it's pretty exciting. We're down to just having to deploy. That's the only thing we've got left. That'll be the last of our coding assignments. I'm pretty excited about this. I think it's turned out very well. I hope that you're excited too and that you can add all these fun features to your own application that you're doing for your final project. So I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye bye.